give you an idea of how excited I was to do this stream, I literally created a like smaller tag for it. See, look. Hold on. Bam. And this you might be like, oh, now I know what she's reading, but it's okay. It's really okay. Let me pause Grennan. I'm so sorry, Grennan. They were playing Goodbye. We're not ending. And let's switch to this. Hold on. Here. And I will open this. See, look how nice this is. You're trying to get Spellcraft is one you haven't seen yet. Gonna start separating your rituals out into their own streams. So witchcraft would be cool. Oh, that would be really cool. Jules Verne. Yeah, I love 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I like Jules Verne a lot. And I thought this would be really fun. It really is something different. But, you know, it's something I was very excited to do. Like, very excited to do, so, yeah, we'll see. Oh, I got emails. It's okay, I'll ignore them. You literally have a classic copy and one you read in school. Nice! So, the version I read is the version I read for the first time was the, Barnes & Noble's Classics edition. I have it over somewhere in my room, because why wouldn't I carry it with me when I go places? But the version I'm going to be reading on stream today is going to be, it's from something called Project Gutenberg ebook, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, translated by Frederick Paul Walter. And this is completely free. You can use it, copy it, give it away. The only thing you can't do is charge people money for them to read it. And I'm not doing that, so. But yeah, I'm going to probably skip the introduction because that's just what F.P. Walter wrote at the University of Houston when he originally translated it. So yeah, I'm very excited. Let me just make sure everything's working. Follow alert box. Okay, perfect. I think we're ready to start. Let me just drink some water and vibe, and this is super cool. Alrighty. This is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. First part. Chapter 1, The Runaway Reef. The year 1866 was marked by a bizarre development, an unexplained and downright inexplicable phenomenon that surely no one has forgotten. Without getting into those rumors that upset civilians in the seaports and deranged the public mind even far inland, it must be said that professional seamen were especially alarmed. Traders, ship owners, captains of vessels, skippers, and master mariners from Europe and America, naval officers from every country, and at their heels the various national governments on these two continents were all extremely disturbed by the business. In essence, over a period of time, several ships had encountered an enormous thing at sea, a long spindle-shaped object, sometimes giving off a phosphorescent glow, infinitely bigger and faster than any whale. The relevant data on this apparition, as recorded in various logbooks, agreed pretty closely as to the structure of the object or creature in question, its unprecedented speed of movement, its startling locomotive power, and the unique vitality with which it seemed to be gifted. If it was a crustacean, it exceeded in bulk any whale, or not crustacean, a cetacean. Oh, that's another thing. I should say two things before I get too deeply into reading. One, it'll be pretty difficult. This is the only translation I know of that's free. Number two, it'll be pretty difficult for me to read chat while I'm doing, reading. So I might not be too fast on that, so feel free to just have this on in the background, and if you do actually have something you want to say, I promise I will look every once in a while, or something you want to say and you want me to see, and then the last one, the thing I wanted to say, is that this book does have a lot of very large words. It has some more difficult to understand parts in terms of I'm pretty sure it will just go on for pages about scientific names of things. So I'll probably deal with those when we get to them, but it's just worth saying now. Okay? And now I'll get back into it. If it was a cetacean, it exceeded in bulk any whale previously classified by science. No naturalist, neither Cuvier nor Lacepede, neither Professor Dumerel nor Professor de Quatrefages, see, I'm dumb, would have accepted the existence of such a monster sight unseen, specifically unseen by their own scientific eyes. Cam, check Twitter. Dude, I'm trying. I did check Twitter. I didn't see anything, Jesse. What? Oh my god. There's a new account made. Has Cam played Pop Tropica? Waiting for Cam to play Pop Tropica again. You know, I tried to play Pop Tropica one time lately, and I had difficulty with it. It was on stream, and it just wasn't loading, so I played Minecraft, because for some reason Pop Tropica wouldn't load and Minecraft would. Anyway. Striking an average of observations taken at different times, rejecting those timid estimates that gave the object a length of 200 feet and ignoring those exaggerated views that saw it as 1.3 miles long, you could still assert that this phenomenal creature greatly exceeded the dimensions of anything then known to scientists, if it existed at all. Now then, it did exist. This was an undeniable fact. And since the human mind dotes on objects of wonder, you can understand the worldwide excitement caused by this unearthly apparition. As for relegating it to the realm of fiction, that charge had to be dropped. They got rid of Flash, this new version made in Java and HTML. Good. Anyway, sorry. In essence, on July 20th, 1866, the steamer Governor Higginson from the Calcutta and Burnock Steam Navigation Company encountered this moving mass 5 miles off the eastern shores of Australia. Captain Baker at first thought he was in the presence of an unknown reef. He was even about to fix its exact location when 2 waterspouts shot out of this inexplicable object and sprang hissing into the air some 105, guys, I can't read numbers, 150 feet. So unless this reef was subject to the intermittent eruptions of a geyser, the Governor Higginson had fair and honest dealings with some aquatic mammal, until then unknown, that could spurt from its blowholes waterspouts mixed with air and steam. Similar events were likewise observed in Pacific seas on July 23rd of the same year by the Christopher Columbus from the West India and Pacific Steam Navigation Company. Consequently, this extraordinary cetacean could transfer itself from one locality to another with startling swiftness, since within an interval of just 3 days, the Governor Higginson and the Christopher Columbus had observed it at 2 positions on the charts separated by a distance of more than 700 nautical leagues. 15 days later, and 2,000 leagues farther, the Helvetica from the Compagnie Nationale and the Shannon from the Royal Mail Line, running on opposite tacks in that part of the Atlantic lying between the United States and Europe, respectively signaled each other that the monster had been sighted in latitude 42 degrees 15 north and longitude 60 degrees 35 west of the meridian of Greenwich. From their simultaneous observations, they were able to estimate the mammal's minimum length at more than 350 English feet. This was because both the Shannon and the Helvetica were of smaller dimensions, although each measured 100 meters stem to stern. Now then, the biggest whales, those whales that frequent the waterways of the islands, have never exceeded a length of 56 meters, if they even reach that. Also, the author left a note saying the English foot is around 30 centimeters, so I don't know how many that adds up to actually feet. One after another, reports arrived that would profoundly affect public opinion. New observations taken by the transatlantic liner Pierre, the Inman's line Etna running afoul of the monster, an official report drawn up by officers on the French frigate Normandy, dead earnest reckonings obtained by the general staff of Commodore Fitzjames aboard the Lord Clyde. In light-hearted countries, people joked about this phenomenon, but such serious practical countries, oh wow, this seems mean, but I'll say it anyway, but such serious practical countries as England, America, and Germany were deeply concerned. This book did come out in the 1800s, just so we know. In every big city, the monster was the latest rage. They sang about it in the coffee houses, they ridiculed it in the newspapers, they dramatized it in the theaters. The tabloids found it a fine opportunity for hatching all sorts of hoaxes. In those newspapers short of copy, you saw the reappearance of every gigantic imaginary creature, from Moby Dick, that dreadful white whale from the high Arctic regions, to the stupendous kraken whose tentacles could entwine a 500-ton craft and drag it into the ocean depths. They even reprinted reports from ancient times, the views of Aristotle accepting the existence of such monsters, then the Norwegian stories of the bishop, the narratives of Paul, and finally the reports of Captain Harrington, whose good faith is above suspicion, and which he claims he saw while aboard the Castilian in 1857, one of those enormous serpents that until then had frequented only the seas of France's old extremist newspaper, The Constitutionalist. An interminable debate then broke out between believers and skeptics in the scholarly societies and scientific journals. The monster question inflamed all minds. During this memorable campaign, journalists making a profession of science battled with those making a profession of wit, spilling waves of ink, and some of them even 2 or 3 drops of blood, since they went from sea serpents to the most offensive personal remarks. For 6 months, the war seesawed. With inexhaustible zest, the popular press took pot shots at feature articles from the Geographic Institute of Brazil, the Royal Academy of Science in Berlin, the British Association, the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., at discussions in the Indian archipelago, in Cosmos published by Father Magino, in Peterman's Mythologian, and at scientific chronicles in the French and foreign newspapers. When the monster's detractors cited a saying by the botanist Linnaeus that nature doesn't make leaps, witty writers in the popular periodicals parodied it, maintaining in essence that nature doesn't make lunatics, ordering their contemporaries never to give the lie to nature by believing in krakens, sea serpents, Moby Dicks, and all other out efforts from drunken seamen. Finally, in a much feared satirical journal, an article by its most popular columnist finished off the monster for good, spurning it in the style of Hippocleitus, repulsing the amorous advances of his stepmother Phaedra, and giving the creature its quietus amid a universal burst of laughter. Wit had defeated science. So, just for anyone who doesn't understand what I just read, because I understand, it was essentially saying the tabloids and the scientific papers were arguing back and forth about its existence, and the tabloids were like, no, this is fake. This is fake, but like, oh, you think this is like some big monster, and science is like, no, we really think it does, and they're like, sure. So, that's just that's how people have been feeling. Also, I do feel this is the perfect time for me to make a little disclaimer, I guess. Since it came up a bit earlier, this book did come out a very long time ago. Some of the concepts that they use in it might be outdated. I don't remember exactly. I haven't read it in a long time. But a lot of the issues in it, or I know in particular, there's a character who works for the main character who would calls him master and that sort of thing. So this is a classical piece of literature. It's old, and yeah. So there's my little disclaimer. And let me take a drink because I shall be doing a lot of speaking. All right. Let me just make sure everything's working. Yes, it is. Okay. During the first months of the year 1867, the question seemed to be buried, and it didn't seem due for resurrection when new facts were brought to the public's attention. But now it was no longer an issue of a scientific problem to be solved, but a quite real and serious danger to be avoided. The question took an entirely new turn. The monster again became an islet, a rock, or reef, but a runaway reef, unfixed and elusive. Thank you for redeeming Hydrate, Jesse. On March 5th, 1867, the Moravian from the Montreal Ocean Company, lying during the night in latitude 27 degrees 30 and longitude 72 degrees 15, ran its starboard quarter afoul of a rock marked on no charts of these waterways. Under combined efforts of wind and 400 horsepower steam, it was traveling at a speed of 13 knots. Without the high quality of its hull, the Moravian would surely have split open from this collision and gone down together with those 237 passengers it was bringing back from Canada. This accident happened around 5 o'clock in the morning, just as day was beginning to break. The officers on watch rushed to the craft's stern. They examined the ocean with the most scrupulous care. They saw nothing except a strong eddy breaking 3 cable lengths out, as if those sheets of water had been violently churned. The site's exact bearings were taken, and the Moravian continued on course, apparently undamaged. Had it run afoul of an underwater rock, or the wreckage of some enormous derelict ship? They were unable to say. But when they examined its undersides in the service yard, they discovered that part of its keel had been smashed. This occurrence, extremely serious in itself, might perhaps have been forgotten like so many others if 3 weeks later it hadn't been reenacted under identical conditions. Only, thanks to the nationality of the ships victimized by this new ramming, and thanks to the reputation of the company to which this ship belonged, the event caused an immense uproar. No one is unaware of the name of that famous English ship owner, Cunard. In 1840, this shrewd industrialist founded a postal service between Liverpool and Halifax, featuring 3 wooden ships with 400 horsepower paddle wheels and a burden of 1,162 metric tons. 8 years later, the company's assets were increased by 4 650 horsepower ships at 1,820 metric tons, and in 2 more years by 2 other vessels of still greater power and tonnage. In 1853, the Cunard Company, whose mail-carrying charter had just been renewed, successfully added to its assets the Arabia, the Persia, the China, the Scotia, the Java, and the Russia, all ships of top speed and, after the Great Eastern, the biggest to ever plow the seas. So, in 1867, this company owned 12 ships, 8 with paddle wheels and 4 with propellers. If I give these highly condensed details, it is so everyone can fully understand the importance of this maritime transportation company, known the world over for its shrewd management. No transoceanic navigational undertaking has been conducted with more ability. No business dealings have been crowned with greater success. In 26 years, Cunard ships have made 2,000 Atlantic crossings without so much a voyage cancelled, a delay recorded, a man, a craft, or even a letter lost. Accordingly, despite strong competition from France, passengers still choose the Cunard line in preference to all others, as can be seen in a recent survey of official documents. Given this, no one will be astonished at the uproar provoked by this accident involving one of its finest steamers. I just noticed cowboy hat was redeemed. Don't mind if I do. Thank you so much, Cunard, for stopping by. I'll keep it on for 5 minutes. On April 13, 1867, with a smooth sea and a moderate breeze, the Scotia lay in longitude 15 degrees 12 and latitude 45 degrees 37. It was traveling at a speed of 13.43 knots under the thrust of its 1,000 horsepower engines. Its paddle wheels were churning the sea with perfect steadiness. It was then drawing 6.7 meters of water and displacing 6,624 cubic meters. See what I mean when I say there's a lot of wordiness here? These are the exact vibes you need tonight, hell yeah. I'm so happy, Brown Jacket Stuffs. Thank you so much for coming. I hope your days have been going well. At 4:17 in the afternoon, during a high tea for passengers gathered in the main lounge, a collision occurred, scarcely notable on the whole, affecting the Scotia's hull in that quarter a little astern of its port paddle wheel. The Scotia hadn't run afoul of something, it had been fouled, and by a cutting or perforating instrument rather than a blunt one. This encounter seemed so minor that nobody on board would have been disturbed by it, had it not been for the shouts of crewmen in the hold who climbed on deck yelling, "We're sinking! We're sinking!" At first, the passengers were quite frightened, but Captain Anderson hastened to reassure them. In fact, there could be no immediate danger. Divided into 7 compartments by watertight bulkheads, the Scotia could brave any leak with impunity. Captain Anderson immediately made his way into the hold. he discovered that the fifth compartment had been invaded by the sea, and that the speed of this invasion proved that the leak was considerable. Fortunately, this compartment didn't contain the boilers, because if their furnaces would have been abruptly extinguished. Furnaces make the ship go. Captain Anderson called an immediate halt, and one of his sailors dived down to assess the damage. Within moments, they had located a hole 2 meters in width on the steamer's underside. Such a leak could not be patched, and with its paddle wheels half swamped, the Scotia had no choice but to continue its voyage. By then, it lay 300 miles from Cape Clear, and after 3 days of delay that filled Liverpool with acute anxiety, it entered the company docks. The engineers then proceeded to inspect the Scotia, which had been put in dry dock. They couldn't believe their eyes. 2.5 meters below its waterline, there gaped a symmetrical gash in the shape of an isosceles triangle. Oh, I just hit my mic with my fingers, I'm sorry. This breach in the sheet iron was so perfectly formed, no punch could have done a cleaner job of it. Consequently, it must have been produced by a perforating tool of uncommon toughness. Plus, after being launched with a prodigious power and then piercing 4 centimeters of sheet iron, this tool had needed to withdraw itself by a backward motion truly inexplicable. This was the last straw, and it resulted in arousing public passions all over again. Indeed, from this moment on, any maritime casualty, without an established cause, was charged to the monster's account. This outrageous animal had to shoulder responsibility for all derelict vessels, whose numbers are unfortunately considerable, since out of those 3,000 ships whose losses are recorded annually at the Marine Insurance Bureau, the figure for steam or sailing ships supposedly lost with all hands in the absence of any news amounts to at least 200. Now then, justly or unjustly, it was the monster who stood accused of their disappearance, and since, thanks to it, travel between the various continents had become more and more dangerous, the public spoke up and demanded straight out that at all cost, the seas must be purged of this fearsome creature. Ahem. Cowboy hat. Done. I appreciate that. I shall drink. I am proud to announce we are on Chapter 2, the pros and cons. Here we shall be introduced to the main character, no longer just a benevolent narrator. Let's see. Chapter 2, the pros and cons. During the period in which these developments were occurring, I had returned from a scientific undertaking organized to explore the Nebraska Badlands in the United States. In my capacity as assistant professor at the Paris Museum of Natural History, I had been attached to this expedition by the French government. After spending 6 months in Nebraska, I arrived in New York, laden with valuable collections near the end of March. My departure for France was set for early May. In the meantime, then, I was busy classifying my mineralogical, botanical, and zoological creatures when that incident took place with the Scotia. I was perfectly abreast of this question, which was the big news of the day. How could I not have been? I had read and reread every American and European newspaper without being any further along. This mystery puzzled me. Finding it impossible to form any news, I drifted from one extreme to the other. Something was out there, that much was certain. And any doubting Thomas was invited to place his finger on the Scotia's wound. When I arrived in New York, the question was at its boiling point. The hypothesis of a drifting islet or elusive reef, put forward by people not quite in their right minds, was completely eliminated. And indeed, unless this reef had an engine in its belly, how could it move about with such prodigious speed? Also discredited was the idea of a floating hull or some other enormous wreckage, and again, because of this speed of movement. So only 2 possible solutions to the question were left, creating 2 very distinct groups of supporters. On one side, those favoring a monster of colossal strength. On the other, those favoring an underwater boat of tremendous motor power. Now then, although the latter hypothesis was completely admissible, admissible, it couldn't stand up to inquiries conducted in both the New World and the Old. That a private individual had such a mechanism at his disposal was less than probable. Where and when had he built it, and how could he have built it in secret? Only some government could own such an engine of destruction, and in these disaster-filled times, when men taxed their ingenuity to build increasingly powerful aggressive weapons, it was possible that, unknown to the rest of the world, some nation could have been testing such a fearsome machine. The rifle led to the torpedo, and the torpedo has led to this underwater battering ram, which in turn will lead to the world putting its foot down. At least, I hope it will. But this hypothesis of a war machine collapsed in the face of formal denials from the various governments. Since the public interest was at stake, and transoceanic travel was suffering, the sincerity of these governments could not be doubted. Besides, how could the assembly of this underwater boat have escaped public notice? Keeping a secret under such circumstances would be difficult enough for an individual, and certainly impossible for a nation whose move is under constant surveillance by rival powers. So, after inquiries conducted in England, France, Russia, Prussia, Spain, Italy, America, and Turkey, the hypothesis of an underwater monitor was ultimately rejected. And so the monster surfaced again, despite the endless witticisms heaped upon it by the popular press, and the human imagination soon got caught up in the most ridiculous fantasies. After I arrived in New York, several people did me the honor of consulting me on the phenomenon in question. In France, I had published a 2-volume work, in quarto, titled The Mysteries of the Great Ocean Depths. Well received in scholarly circles, this book had established me as a specialist in this pretty obscure field of natural history. My views were in demand. As long as I could deny the reality of the business, I confined myself to a flat no comment. But soon, pinned to the wall, I had to explain myself straight out. And in this vein, the Honorable Pierre Aronnax, professor at the Paris Museum, I was summoned by the New York Herald to formulate his views no matter what. Also, another thing, if I'm pronouncing names wrong, I'm sorry, I'll learn as I go. I complied. Since I could no longer hold my tongue, I let it wag. I discussed the question in its every aspect, both political and scientific, and this is an excerpt from the well-padded article I published on the issue on April 30th. Therefore, I wrote, after examining these different hypotheses one by one, we are forced, every other supposition having been refuted, to accept the existence of an extremely powerful marine animal. The deepest parts of the ocean are totally unknown to us. No soundings have been able to reach them. What goes on in those distant depths? What creatures inhabit, or could inhabit, those regions 12 or 15 miles beneath the surface of the water? What is the constitution of these animals? It's almost beyond conjecture. However, the solution to this problem submitted to me can take the form of a choice between 2 alternatives. Either we know every variety of creature populating our planet, or we do not. And if we do not know every one of them, if nature still keeps secrets from us, nothing is more admissible than to accept the existence of fish or crustaceans of new species, or even new genera, animals with a basically cast iron constitution that inhibits strata beyond the reach of our surroundings, and which some development or other, an urge or a whim if you prefer, can bring to the upper level of the ocean for long intervals. If, on the other hand, we do know every living species, we must look for the animal in question among those marine creatures already catalogued, and in this event, I would be inclined to accept the existence of a giant narwhal. The common narwhal, or sea unicorn, often reaches a length of 60 feet. Increase its dimensions 5-fold or even 10-fold, then give this crustacean a strength in proportion to its size while enlarging its offensive weapons, and you'll have the animal we're looking for. It would have the proportions determined by the officers of the Shannon, the instrument needed to perforate the Scotia, and the power to pierce a steamer's skull. Hull. Boats don't have heads. In essence, the narwhal is armed with a sort of ivory sword, or lance, as certain naturalists have expressed it. It's a king-sized tooth as hard as steel. Some of these teeth have been found buried in the bodies of baleen whales, which the narwhal attacks with invariable success. Others have been wrenched, not without difficulty, from the undersides of vessels that narwhals have pierced clean through as a gimlet pierces a wine barrel. The museum at the Faculty of Medicine in Paris owns one of these tusks, with a length of 2.25 meters and a width at its base of 48 centimeters. All right then. Imagine this weapon to be 10 times stronger and the animal 10 times more powerful, launch it at a speed of 20 miles per hour, multiply its mass times its velocity, and you get just the collision we need to cause the specified catastrophe. So, until information becomes more abundant, I plump for a sea unicorn of colossal dimensions, no longer armed with a mere lance, but with an actual spur, like ironclad frigates or those warships called rams, whose mass and motor power it would possess simultaneously. This inexplicable phenomenon is thus explained away, unless it's something else entirely, which, despite everything that has been cited, studied, explored, and experienced, is still possible. These last words were cowardly of me, but as far as I could, I wanted to protect my professorial dignity and not lay myself open to laughter from the Americans, who, when they do laugh, laugh raucously. I had left myself a loophole, yet deep down, I had accepted the existence of the monster. My article was hotly debated, causing a fine old uproar. It rallied a number of supporters. Moreover, the solution it proposed allowed for free play of the imagination. The human mind enjoys impressive visions of unearthly creatures. Now then, the sea is precisely their best medium, the only setting suitable for the breeding and growing of such giants, next to which such land animals as elephants or rhinoceroses are mere dwarves. The liquid masses support the largest known species of mammals and perhaps conceal mollusks of incomparable size or crustaceans too frightful to contemplate, such as 100-meter lobsters or crabs weighing 200 metric tons. Why not? Formerly, in prehistoric days, land animals, quadrupeds, apes, reptiles, birds, were built on a gigantic scale. Our Creator cast them using a colossal mold that time has gradually made smaller. With its untold depths, couldn't the sea keep alive such huge specimens from life of another age, this sea that never changes while the land masses undergo almost continuous alteration? Couldn't the heart of the ocean hide the last remaining varieties of these titanic species, for whom years are centuries and centuries millennia? But I mustn't let these fantasies run away with me. Enough of these fairy tales that time has changed for me into harsh realities. I repeat, opinion had crystallized as to the nature of this phenomenon, and the public accepted without argument the existence of a prestigious creature that had nothing in common with the fabled sea serpent. Yet, if some saw it purely as a scientific problem to be solved, more practical people, especially in America and England, were determined to purge the ocean of this daunting monster to ensure the safety of transoceanic travel. The industrial and commercial newspapers dealt with the question chiefly from this viewpoint. The Shipping and Mercantile Gazette, the Lloyd's List, France's Packet Boat, and Maritime and Colonial Review, all the rags devoted to insurance companies, who threatened to raise their premium rates, were unanimous at this point. Public opinion being pronounced, the states of the Union were the first in the field. In New York, preparations were underway for an expedition designed to chase this narwhal. A high-speed frigate, the Abraham Lincoln, was fitted out for putting to sea as soon as possible. The naval arsenals were unlocked for Commander Farragut, who pressed energetically forward with the arming of his frigate. But as it always happens, just when a decision had been made to chase the monster put in no further appearances. For 2 months, nobody heard a word about it. Not a single ship encountered it. Apparently, the unicorn had gotten wise to these plots being woven around it. People were constantly babbling about the creature, even via the Atlantic cable. Accordingly, the wags claimed that this slippery rascal had waylaid some passing telegram and was making the most of it. So, here we go. So, the boat was equipped for a far-off voyage and armed with fearsome fishing gear, but nobody knew where to steer it. And impatience grew until, on June 2nd, word came from the Tampico, a steamer on the coast of San Francisco sailing from California to Shanghai, that it had sighted the animal again, 3 weeks before, in the northerly seas of the Pacific. This news caused intense excitement. Not even a 24-hour breather was granted to Commander Farragut. His provisions were loaded on board. His coal bunkers were overflowing. Not a crewman was missing from his post. To cast off, he needed only to fire and stoke his furnaces. Half a day's delay would have been unforgivable. But Commander Farragut wanted nothing more than to go forth. I received a letter 3 hours before the Abraham Lincoln left its Brooklyn pier. The letter reads as follows. Pierre Aronnax, professor at the Paris Museum, 5th Avenue Hotel, New York. Sir, if you would like to join the expedition on the Abraham Lincoln, the government of the Union will be pleased to regard you as France's representative in this undertaking. Commander Farragut has a cabin at your disposal. Very cordially yours, J.B. Hobson, Secretary of the Navy. Okay, I'm going to take another second to drink, maybe check in. How's everybody doing? I'm really enjoying this. The reason I'm taking my break now is because we're about to start chapter 3, and I believe I will read chapter 3, so. I'm enjoying this just as much as I thought I would. I love this book, and although it is not perfect, and I tried reading some reviews from it the other day, and they were actually a lot of people saying they didn't like it. I really do. So, just a quick thank you to everybody who's watching it here with me, watching me and listening to me read. Yeah, I'm going to go back to reading now. Chapter 3, As Master Wishes. Once again, disclaimer, there is a character. He is a servant of Professor Aronnax. He is Flemish. So yes, that is he's just a Dutch guy who works for Professor Aronnax. But anyway, let me go back to this. 3 seconds before the arrival of J.B. Hobson's letter, I no more dreamed of chasing the unicorn than of trying for the Northwest Passage. 3 seconds after reading this letter from the Honorable Secretary of the Navy, I understood at last that my true vocation, my sole purpose in life, was to hunt down this disturbing monster and rid the world of it. Even so, I had just returned from an arduous journey, exhausted and badly needing a rest. I wanted nothing more than to see my country again, my friends, my modest quarters by the botanical gardens, my dearly beloved collections. But now nothing could hold me back. I forgot everything else, and without another thought of exhaustion, friends, or collections, I accepted the American government's offer. Besides, I mused, all roads lead home to Europe, and our unicorn may be gracious enough to take me towards the coast of France. That fine animal may even let itself be captured in European seas as a personal favor to me, and I'll bring it back to the Museum of Natural History, at least half a meter of its ivory lance. But in the meantime, I would have to look for this narwhal in the northern Pacific Ocean, which meant returning to France by the way of the Antipodes. Counsel, I called in an impatient voice. Counsel was my servant, a devoted lad who went with me on all of my journeys, a gallant Flemish boy whom I genuinely liked and who returned the compliment, a born stoic, punctilious on principle, habitually hard-working, rarely startled by life's surprises, very skillful with his hands, efficient in his every duty, and despite having a name that means counsel, never giving advice, not even the unsolicited kind. From rubbing shoulders with scientists in our little universe by the botanical gardens, the boy had come to know a thing or two. Max, you're mean. In Council, I had a seasoned specialist in botanical classification, an enthusiast who could run with acrobatic agility up and down the whole ladder of branches, groups, classes, subclasses, orders, families, genera, subgenera, species, and varieties. But there his science came to a halt. Classifying was everything to him, so he knew nothing else. Well versed in the theory of classification, he was poorly versed in its practical application, and I doubt that he could tell a sperm whale from a baleen whale. And yet, what a fine, gallant lad. For the past 10 years, Consil had gone with me wherever science beckoned. Not once did he comment on the length or hardships of the journey. Never did he object to buckling up his suitcase for any country whatever, China or Congo, no matter how far off it was. He went here, there, and everywhere in perfect contentment. Moreover, he enjoyed excellent health that defied all ailments, owned solid muscles, but hadn't a nerve in him, not a sign of nerves. The mental type, I mean. The lad was 30 years old, and his age to that of his employer was 15 as is to 20. Please forgive me for this underhanded way of me admitting that I had turned 40. Thank you for redeeming hydrate. I shall do that. But Council had one flaw. He was a fanatic on formality, and he only addressed me in the third person, to the point where it got tiresome. Council, I repeated while feverishly beginning my preparations for departure. To be sure, I had confidence in this devoted lad. Ordinarily, I never asked whether or not it suited him to go with me on my journeys, but this time, an expedition was at issue that could drag on indefinitely, a hazardous undertaking whose purpose was to hunt an animal that could sink a frigate as easily as a walnut shell. There was good reason to stop and think, even for the world's most emotionless man. What would Council say? Thanks, Brown Jacket Stuffs. Smart water for a smart me. Council, I called a third time. He appeared. Did the master summon me? He said, entering. Yes, my boy, get my things ready and yours ready. We're departing in 2 hours. As master wishes, Council replied serenely. We haven't a moment to lose. Pack as much into my trunk as you can, my traveling kit, my suits, shirts, and socks. Don't bother counting, just squeeze it all in, and hurry. What about master's collections? Council ventured to observe. We'll deal with them later. What? Oh, here's him listing a bunch of scientific names. The Archaeotherium, the Hyrocytherium, Orodonts, Cheropotamus, and Master's other fossil skeletons. The hotel will keep them for us. What about Master's live fish? They'll feed it during our absence. Anyhow, we'll leave instructions to ship the whole menagerie to France. Then we aren't returning to Paris? Council asked. Yes, we are, certainly, I replied evasively, but after we make a detour. Whatever detour you wish. Oh, it's nothing really, a route slightly less direct, that's all. We're leaving on the Abraham Lincoln. As you think is best, Council replied placidly. You see, my friend, it's an issue of the monster, the notorious narwhal. We're going to rid the seas of it. The author of a 2-volume work in quarto on the mysteries of the great ocean depths has no excuse for not setting sail with the Commander Farragut. It's a glorious mission, but also a dangerous one. We don't know where it will take us. These beasts can be quite unpredictable, but we're going to just the same. We'll have a commander who's game for anything. What you do, I'll do, Council replied. But think it over, because I don't want to hide anything from you. This is one of those voyages from which people don't always come back. As you wish. A quarter of an hour later, our trunks were ready. Council did them in a flash, and I was sure the lad hadn't missed a thing because he classified shirts and suits as expertly as birds and mammals. The hotel elevator dropped us off in the main vestibule on the mezzanine. I went down a short stair leading to the ground floor. I settled my bill at that huge counter that was always under siege by a considerable crowd. I left instructions for shipping my containers of stuffed animals and dried plants to Paris, France. I know he means not the stuffed animals, he means taxidermy, but I like to imagine that the professor just carries around a lot of stuffed animals. I digress. I opened a line of credit sufficient to cover the fish, and, counsel at my heels, I jumped into a carriage. For a fare of 20 francs, the vehicle went down Broadway to Union Square, took 4th Ave to its junction with Bowery Street, turned to Catherine Street, and halted at Pier 34. There, the ferry transferred men, horses, and carriage to Brooklyn, that great New York annex located on the left bank of the East River, and in a few minutes we arrived at the wharf next to which the Abraham Lincoln was vomiting torrents of black smoke from its 2 funnels. Our baggage was immediately carried to the deck of the frigate. I rushed aboard. I asked for Commander Farragut. One of the sailors led me to the afterdeck, where I stood in the presence of a smart-looking officer, who extended his hand to me. Professor Pierre Aronnax, he said to me. The same, I replied. Commander Farragut? In person. Welcome aboard, Professor. Your cabin is waiting for you. I bowed, letting the commander attend to getting underway. I was taken to the cabin that had been set aside for me. The Abraham Lincoln had been perfectly chosen and fitted out for its new assignment. It was a high-speed boat, furnished with superheating equipment that allowed the tension of its steam to build to 7 atmospheres. Under this pressure, the Abraham Lincoln reached an average speed of 18.3 miles per hour, a considerable speed, but still not enough to cope with our gigantic citation. The frigate's interior accommodations complemented its nautical virtues. I was well satisfied with my cabin, which was located in the stern and opened into the officers' mess. We'll be quite comfortable here, I told Consul. With all due respect to Master, Consul replied, as comfortable as a hermit crab inside the shell of a whelk. I left Consul to the proper stowing of our luggage and climbed on deck to watch the preparations for getting underway. Just then, Commander Farragut was giving orders to cast off the last moorings holding the Abraham Lincoln to its Brooklyn pier, and so, if I had been delayed by a quarter of an hour, or even less, the frigate would have gone without me, and I would have missed out on this unearthly, extraordinary, and inconceivable expedition, whose true story might well meet with some skepticism. But Commander Farragut didn't want to waste a single day, or even a single hour, in making for those seas where the animal had just been sighted. He summoned his engineer. "Are we up to pressure?" he asked the man. "Aye, sir," the engineer replied. "Go ahead, then," Commander Farragut called. At this order, which was relayed to the engine by means of a compressed air device, the mechanics activated the startup wheel. Steam rushed, whistling, into the gaping valves. Long horizontal pistons groaned and pushed the tie rods of the drive shaft. The blades of the propeller churned the waves with increasing speed, and the Abraham Lincoln moved out majestically amid a spectator-laden escort of some 100 ferries and tenders. Apparently tenders, by the way, are small steamboats that assist the big liners. The wharves of Brooklyn and every part of New York bordering the East River were crowded with curiosity seekers. Departing from 500,000 throats, 3 cheers burst forth in succession. Thousands of handkerchiefs were waving above these tightly packed masses, hailing the Abraham Lincoln, until it reached the waters of the Hudson River at the tip of the long peninsula that forms New York City. The boat then went along the New Jersey coast, this wonderful right bank of the river, all loaded down with country homes, and passed by the forts to salutes from their biggest cannons. The Abraham Lincoln replied by 3 times lowering and hoisting the American flag, whose 39 stars, damn, this is old, gleamed from the gaff of the mizzen sail. Then, changing speed to take the buoy-marked channel that curved into the inner bay formed by the spit of Sandy Hook, it hugged the sand-covered strip of land where thousands of spectators acclaimed us one more time. The escort of boats and tenders still followed the frigate and only left us when we came abreast of the lightship, whose 2 signal lights marked the entrance to the narrows of Upper New York Bay. I hope lightship doesn't mean lighthouse. 3 o'clock then sounded. The harbor pilot went down to his dinghy and rejoined a little schooner waiting for him to leeward. The furnaces were stoked. The propeller churned the waves more swiftly. The frigate skirted the flat yellow coast of Long Island, and at 8 o'clock in the evening, after the lights of Fire Island vanished into the northwest, we ran at full steam onto the dark waters of the Atlantic. Let me just see. My phone died and I just got power back. I'm about to have to go, though. I really appreciate you reading this through, and I'm gonna watch the rest of the VOD. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. I'm reacting to you saying, me saying 39 stars. Yeah, this is a 1800s era book. I just want to say this has, like, it's way cooler to be reading this now than it was when I first read it and since the last time I've read it, because as someone who now goes to school on Long Island and now can say I've, like, seen the Hudson River a fair few times, been to Manhattan, been to Brooklyn, seen Sandy Hook, seen and been to Fire Island, all of the places just mentioned, it's like super cool for me now that I have more of like a connection to this book. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark. It's around 9 p.m. I would still like to read another chapter, but after that, I probably am going to have to stop because my voice kind of hurts, and if I'm listening to myself, then I probably shouldn't go too much further because I don't want to lose my voice. And also, just to answer what you're saying, Ashlyn, I know that the chat and everything's a little bit delayed, but I'll just say now. Yeah, it is really cool to have that, I guess, connection to him mentioning, like, Long Island in it. Connection to a lot of literature where, in Gatsby, they mention, like, it's based off of Long Island, you know? And just stuff like that, where now that I'm actually here, I kind of understand the stuff he's saying, where he's like, oh yeah, there were all these ferries and boats on the left side of the Hudson, and then when we were passing New Jersey on the right, it was just townhouses. I'm like, yeah, that's Jersey. Jersey's a lot of houses. I don't hate Jersey. For anyone who might have seen my improv show I did with my school earlier today, Tequila Mockingbird, that's my troupe, we just did a whole bit about New Jersey, which is interesting, but, you know, connected. Jersey City, baby. Yeah. Alrighty, I'm gonna take one more sip of water, and then I'm gonna move on to Chapter 4, Ned Land. At the risk of oversharing, one of the astrology apps I have just sent me a notification with the title Grieving. And so I would just like to take this moment to say, anyone from my personal life who may be, or I guess anyone watching this who may be going through anything, I really hope everything works out for you. Life is super stressful sometimes, and I know things have been very hectic lately, of course, with the pandorama we find ourselves in, and also just, you know, life keeps moving on, changes keep happening. Whatever it is, whatever's been bothering you or on your mind, I wish you luck with that. Again, sometimes things are hard, but, you know, there's a lot of things that make everything worth it and make me feel better. And, you know, I hope that watching this stream gives you just a little bit of happiness, or at least some sort of reprieve from whatever might be going on in your personal life. So, yeah. Alrighty, goodbye, Ashlyn. And yeah, Max. Okay. Chapter 4, Ned Land. Commander Farragut was a good seaman. I've said seaman like 3 times now. Worthy of the frigate he commanded. His ship and he were one. He was its very soul. On the Cretacean question, no doubts arose in his mind, and he didn't allow the animal's existence to be disputed aboard his vessel. He believed in it as certain pious women believe in the Leviathan from the Book of Job. Or Job. Sorry, I'm not a religious person. Out of faith, not reason. The monster existed, and he had vowed to rid the seas of it. The man was a sort of Knight of Rhodes, a latter-day Sir Diodon of Gozo, on his way to fight an encounter with the dragon devastating the island. Either Commander Farragut would slay the narwhal, or the narwhal would slay Commander Farragut. No middle of the road for those two. The ship's officers shared the views of their leader. They could be heard chatting, discussing, arguing, calculating the different chances of an encounter, and observing the vast expanse of the ocean. Voluntary watches from the cross streets of the top-gallant sail were self-imposed by more than one who would have cursed such toil under any other circumstances. As often as the sun swept over its daily arc, the masts were populated with sailors whose feet itched and couldn't hold still on the planking of the deck below, and the Abraham Lincoln's stem post hadn't even cut the suspected waters of the Pacific. As for the crew, they only wanted to encounter the unicorn, harpoon it, and haul it on board, and carve it up. They surveyed the sea with scrupulous care. Besides, Commander Farragut had mentioned that a certain sum of $2,000 was waiting for the man who first sighted the animal, be he captain, boy, or sailor, mate, or officer. I'll let the reader decide whether eyes got proper exercise aboard the Abraham Lincoln. I wonder how much $2,000 was back then. I'm not sure. And yeah, maybe I do just like saying it. Let me try to look up when this book came out. I'm gonna do some quick maths. I just looked it up. I just looked up when the movie came out. No, when did the book come out? 1872. Okay. Okay. Oh Jesus, this math is a lot. Yeah. So let's say times 20. So it's roughly $43,000 nowadays. Just to give anyone an idea of how much they've been offered if whoever finds this. So I'd say that's actually about a pretty good amount. 40,000, I would do that. Anyway. As for me, I didn't lag... Yeah, a cheap house, Max. As for me, I didn't lag behind the others, and I yielded to no one my share in these daily observations. Our boat would have had 50 good reasons for renaming itself the Argus, after that mythological beast with the 100 eyes. The lone rebel among us was Counsel, who seemed utterly uninterested in the question of exciting us, and was out of step with the general enthusiasm on board. As I said, Commander Farragut had carefully equipped his ship with all of the gear needed to fish for a giant whale. No whaling vessel could have been better armed. We had every known mechanism, from the hand-held harpoon to the blunderbuss firing barbed arrows to the duck gun with exploding bullets. What is that? On the forecastle was mounted the latest model breech-loading cannon, a very heavy barrel and narrow of bore, a weapon that would figure in the Universal Exhibition of 1867. Made in America, this valuable instrument could fire a 4-kilogram conical projectile an average distance of 16 kilometers without the least bother. Damn. So the Abraham Lincoln wasn't lacking in means of destruction. But it had better still. It had Ned Land, the king of harpooners. Gifted with uncommon manual ability, Ned Land was a Canadian man who had no equal in his dangerous trade. Dexterity, coolness, bravery, and cunning were virtues he possessed to a high degree, and it took a truly crafty baleen whale or an exceptionally astute sperm whale to elude the thrusts of his harpoon. We're just gonna move on from that. Ned Land was about 40 years old. That's our age. You know, the professor. Oh, my eye itches. Okay, we're fine. A man of great height, over 6 English feet. He was powerfully built. How tall is an English foot? Whatever. He was powerfully built, serious in manner, not very sociable, sometimes headstrong, and quite ill-tempered when crossed. His looks caught the attention, and above all else, the strength of his gaze, which gave a unique emphasis to his facial appearance. Commander Farragut, to my thinking, had made a wise move in hiring this man. With his eye and his throwing arm, he was worth the whole crew all by himself. I can do no better than to compare him with a powerful telescope that could double as a cannon, always ready to fire. To say Canadian is to say French, and as unsociable as Ned Land was, I must admit he took a definite liking to me. No doubt it was my nationality that attracted him. It was an opportunity for him to speak and for me to hear the old dialect still used in some Canadian provinces. The harpooner's family originated in Quebec, and they were already a line of bold fishermen back in the days from when this town still belonged to France. Little by little, Ned developed a taste for chatting, and I loved hearing the tales of his adventurings in the polar seas. He described his fishing trips and his battles with great natural lyricism. His tales took on the form of an epic poem, and I felt I was hearing some Canadian Homer reciting his Iliad of the high Arctic regions. I'm writing this of the bold companion as I currently know him, because we've become friends, united in that permanent comradeship born and cemented during only the most frightful crisis. Ah, my gallant Ned, may I ask only to live 100 years more, the longer to remember you. Ah. Based Homer. And now, what were Ned Land's views on this question of a marine monster? I must admit that he flatly didn't believe in the unicorn, and let alone on board, he didn't share the general conviction. He avoided even dealing with the subject, for which one day I felt compelled to take him to task. During the magnificent evening of June 25th, in other words, 3 weeks after our departure, the frigate lay abreast of Cabo Blanco, 30 miles to leeward off the coast of Patagonia. We had crossed the Tropic of Capricorn, and the Strait of Magellan opened less than 700 miles to the south. Before 8 days were out, the Abraham Lincoln would plow the waves of the Pacific. Seated on the afterdeck, Ned Land and I chatted about one thing and another, staring at that mysterious sea whose depths to this day are beyond the reach of human eyes. Quite naturally, I led our conversation around to the giant unicorn, and I weighed our expedition's various chances for success or failure. Then, seeing that Ned had just let me talk without saying much himself, I pressed him more closely. "Ned," I asked him, "how can you still doubt the reality of this cetacean we're after? Do you have any particular reason for being so skeptical?" The harpooner stared at me a while before replying, slapped his broad forehead in one of his standard gestures, closed his eyes as if to collect himself, and finally said, "Just maybe, Professor Aronnax." "But Ned, you're a professional whaler, a man familiar with all the great marine animals. Your mind should be easily accepting of this hypothesis of an enormous crustacean, and you ought to be the last one to doubt it under these circumstances." "That's just where you're mistaken, Professor," Ned replied. "The common man may still believe in fabulous comets crossing outer space, or in prehistoric monsters living at the Earth's core." That's a reference to one of Jules Verne's other books, Journey to the Center of the Earth. But astronomers and geologists don't swallow such fairy tales. It's the same with whalers. I've chased plenty of whales, I've harpooned a good number, I've killed several. But no matter how powerful and well-armed they were, neither their tails nor their tusks could puncture the sheet iron plates of a steamer. "Even so, Ned, people mention vessels that narwhal tusks have run clean through." "Wooden ships, maybe," the Canadian replied, "but I've never seen the like. So till I have proof of the contrary, I'll deny that baleen whales, sperm whales, or unicorns can do any such thing." "Listen to me, Ned." No, Professor. I'll go along with anything you want, except that. Some gigantic devilfish, maybe?" "Even less likely, Ned. The devilfish is merely a mollusk, and this name hints at its semi-liquid flesh because it's Latin, meaning soft one. The devilfish doesn't belong to the vertebrate branch, and even if it were 500 feet long, it would still be utterly harmless to ships like the Scotia or the Abraham Lincoln. Consequently, the feats of krakens or other monsters of that ilk must be relegated to the realm of fiction. Sorry. So, Mr. Naturalist, Ned Land continued in a bantering tone, you'll just keep on believing in the existence of some enormous whale. Yes, Ned. I repeat it with a conviction backed by factual logic. I believe in the existence of a mammal with a powerful constitution, belonging to the vertebrate branch, like baleen whales, sperm whales, or dolphins, and armed with a tusk made of horn that has tremendous penetrating power. I just noticed you said, fuck Canada. Canada. Bye, thank you so much for coming, Ben. Also, you're watching my stream in VR, good for you. Or at least you're having on in the background while in VR. How do you type while you're in VR? Let's not worry about that. Okay, let me get back to this. Humph, the harpooner put in, shaking his head with the attitude of a man who does not want to be convinced. Note well, my fine Canadian, I went on, if such an animal exists, if it lives deep in the ocean, if it frequents the liquid strata located miles beneath the surface of the water, it needs to have a constitution so solid it defies all comparison. And why this powerful constitution? Ned asked. Because it takes incalculable strength just to live in those deep strata and withstand their pressure. Oh, really? Ned said, tipping me a wink. Oh, really, and I can prove it to you with a few simple figures. Bosh, Ned replied. You can make figures do anything you want. In business, Ned, but not in mathematics. Listen to me. Let's accept that the pressure of one atmosphere is represented by the pressure of a column of water 32 feet high. In reality, such a column of water wouldn't be quite so high because here we're dealing with salt water, which is denser than fresh water. Well then, when you dive under the waves, Ned, for every 32 feet down, this pressure is equal to 10 atmospheres, or 100 atmospheres at 3,200 feet, and 1,000 atmospheres at 32,000 feet, that is, at about 2.5 vertical leagues down. Which is tantamount to saying that if you could reach such a depth in the ocean, each square centimeter on your body surface would be experiencing 1,000 kilograms of pressure. Now, my gallant Ned, do you know how many square centimeters you have on your bodily surface? I haven't the foggiest notion, Professor Aronnax. About 17,000. As many as that? Yes, and since the atmosphere's pressure actually weighs slightly more than 1 kilogram per square centimeter, your 17,000 square centimeters are totaling 17,568 kilograms at this very moment. Without my noticing it? Without your noticing it. And if you aren't crushed by so much pressure, it's because the air penetrates the interior of your body with equal pressure. While the inside and the outside pressures are in perfect balance, they neutralize each other and allow you to tolerate them without discomfort. But in the water, it's another story. Yes, I see, Ned replied, growing more interested. Because the water surrounds me but doesn't penetrate me. Precisely, Ned. So at 32 feet beneath the surface of the sea, you'll undergo a pressure of 17,568 kilograms. At 320 feet, or at 10 times greater pressure, that's 175,680 kilograms. At 3,200 feet, or 100 times greater pressure, it is 1,756,800 kilograms. 56,800 kilograms. Finally, at 32,000 feet, or 1,000 times greater pressure, it is 17,568,000 kilograms. In other words, you'd be squashed as flat as if you'd just been yanked from between the plates of a hydraulic press. Fire and brimstone, Ned put in. All right then, my fine harpooner. If vertebrates several hundred meters long and proportionate in bulk live at such depths, their surface areas make up millions of square centimeters, and the pressure they undergo must be assessed in billions of kilograms. Calculate, then, how much resistance of bone structure and strength of constitution they'd need in order to withstand such pressures. They'd need to be manufactured, Ned replied, from sheet iron plates 8 inches thick like ironclad frigates. Right then, Ned, and picture the damage that such a mass could inflict if it were launched with the speed of an express train against a ship's hull. Yes, indeed. Maybe, the Canadian replied, staggered by these figures but still not willing to give in. Well, have I convinced you? You've convinced me of one thing, Mr. Naturalist. That deep in the sea, such animals would need to be as strong as you say, if they exist. But if they don't exist, my stubborn harpooner, then how do you explain the accident that happened to the Scotia? It's maybe, Ned said, hesitating. Go on. Because it couldn't be true, the Canadian replied, unconsciously echoing a famous catchphrase of the scientist Arago. But this reply proved nothing other than how bull-headed the harpooner could be. That day, I pressed him no further. The Scotia's accident was undeniable. Its hole was real enough that it had to be plugged up, and I don't think a hole's existence can be more emphatically proven. Now then, this hole didn't make itself, and since it hadn't resulted from underwater rocks or underwater machines, it must have been caused by the perforating tool of some animal. Now, for all the reasons put forward to this point, I believed that this animal was a member of the branch Vertebrata, class Mammalia, group Prisciforma, and finally order Cetacea. As for the family in which it would be placed, baleen whale, sperm whale, or dolphin, the genus to which it belonged, and the species in which it would find its proper home, these questions had to be left for later. To answer them called for dissecting this unknown monster, and to dissect it called for catching it. To catch it called for harpooning it, which was Ned Land's business. To harpoon it called for sighting it, which was the crew's business. And to sight it called for encountering it, which was a chancy business. Okay. You're a mod with no sub? Wait. Yeah. Let me see. You did get subbed. Hi, Spicy McRib. Oh? Thank you for following me, Cameron. I'm also a Cameron. I'm sad to say, thank you, Ashlyn, for contributing to the I Eat Cheese challenge. I said that I would finish after this chapter, and I am going to have to finish after this chapter because, finish now because my throat is starting to hurt me, and that means I should probably stop talking so much. So yeah, I think that was super fun. Maybe fun isn't the correct word for it, but I love reading, and I feel like nowadays I don't get to read as often as I used to. And although this isn't what I, started off today wanting to do, this is something I've been sitting on for about a week now, and something that I thought would be super fun. And yeah, I don't know, I'm super jazzed about it. Oh, the community challenge is 25% complete. You guys are crazy. I literally just started it. I'm gonna have to start making these so much more expensive because we're at 7K and I made it 20. Oh my god. I made it 20,000. I don't want to eat cheese. I don't want to eat. It's okay, guys. I will do it. I will do it. I will do it. It's a community challenge. I will have to figure out how much cheese I'm willing to eat. We'll have to discuss that. No way I'm hearing cheese slandered. Yeah, I don't like it that much. I've been starting to eat it. You're so lucky there's a limit. How much coins do you have, Kanar? Almost eat the cheese. No. I'll have to figure out how much I want to eat. I don't like it that much. I've been getting better over the years. Max and Chloe, when she was here with me earlier, they would know there was a period of time where I would not tolerate any cheese. But I have now gotten to the point where I will eat it sometimes on sandwiches. Can we pick the kind of cheese? Maybe. It has to be something I can get kind of easy. We're gonna figure this out later, Kanar, okay? We can talk about this off stream. I will just say, because I don't like cheese very much, don't know anything about the types at all. So yeah, I know that on sometimes some types of sandwiches you'll get provolone. Miles Sully is also contributing. Oh gosh. You're interested in this cheese. We can talk about this. You're just listing cheese, huh? Good thing you're a moderator. This is borderline spam. But yeah, thank you so much to everybody who's been watching the stream today. I hope you've had fun. This has really been an interesting one, right? I've started off with just complete chaos in terms of, you know, a Don't Starve stream that ended up not really happening. Mod disagree. Yeah, it's not spam. You know, I'm just being salty because I don't like cheese. But yeah, I'm gonna go look to see who else I might want to raid. Thank you to all the people who've been following and subbing today. Like, thank you so much. We're, I think, just hit 1 month since I've been an affiliate a few days ago, which means that, is that for vegan cheese? Oh gosh. But, so that means that a lot of my subs that I got for the first time are expiring, which is chill. I've experienced way more support than I honestly thought I would have, but it's just my way of saying people have been resubbing, which is something, I know it's a normal thing that happens to Twitch streamers, but it feels crazy. Like, I don't know, it feels insane. But yeah, thank you so much to everybody who's been following and everything. Let me see. Oh, Ash and Ashlyn. That's probably why she's been lurking in my stream. It's because she started to stream. She's streaming Mother right now, it looks like. If you're interested, the type of streams she generally does are very, very conversation-based. Super talking to the chat and everything like that. She's very chill. I do rate her a lot. But I think I am going to raid her again right now just because, you know, she deserves it. She showed up in mine today. She's very nice. But yeah, let me type that out. And hopefully there won't be any typos because I am using nails, fake nails. You see? Also, I've noticed my chat function has been kind of messed up on my screen, but let's not worry about that too much. Yeah, one last thank you to everyone who's been following. If you want to follow me on other social media, here it is down below. It's on like all of my screens. But yeah, alrighty. Goodbye, everybody. It's been super nice chilling and vibing with you. And now I take my leave. I will raid. Okay, goodbye. I have to wait 10 seconds. Aight.